A guy who was a self-educated person, and he also worked for Alexander Graham Bell. He worked for both Edison and Graham Bell, designing two of the most important technologies in the history of humanity. So first I'd like to introduce you to Lewis Latimer.
Latimer, and my story is seldom told. I was the youngest son of Rebecca and George Latimer, former slaves who bought their freedom with the help of a black minister and the community. I was born in 1848 outside of Boston and attended only grade school. The remainder of my education was self-taught. I had an insatiable appetite for reading, drawing, and learning in general.
First in the operating room and self-funding a company and building it into the premier thought leader around that discipline of platelet acceleration. And Patrick, if you could share your story, it brought me to tears when I first met you, the relentlessness and the discipline required to build something like that.
Well, thanks again. I want to thank you, John, first for allowing me to be part of this illustrious panel, and also to honor Lewis Latimer in this way. You know, I started out in New York City as a registered nurse working open heart surgery, and you know, this is something that I wanted to do, sort of a stepping stone for me to really pursue my dream. And my dream job was really being an open heart perfusionist. So when that opportunity presented itself in Miami, Florida, Barry University, I jumped on board and became an open heart perfusionist. I graduated in 1993. From there, I moved to beautiful Fort Myers. I've been here for a really long time. And I was really doing my thing. I pulled up my bootstraps and I got into the operating room, and you know, I really, you know, put my best foot forward. And then 6 years later, everything changed for me. So really, it's an amazing story. You know, I am between cases on break in the operating room, and I'm reading an article about an ointment. In that ointment was designed to treat chronic non-healing wounds. And in the ointment, it had what I consider a placebo dose of a single growth factor. And it was a recombinant growth factor. And for anyone else, I think reading that article, they would just glaze over it and keep moving. But for me, there were a whole lot of scientific bells and whistles ringing off my head at that point. I mean, it was a turning point for me. It was just one simple article. And the reason being is that, you know, as a perfusionist, you know, I specialize in adult extracorporeal technology and also blood management. So I knew a lot about blood and blood components and what blood can do. So when I read that article, I thought, well, you know, if we had this ointment was used to treat chronic non-healing wounds, how much faster would that wound heal if we were to use the patient's own growth factors and cellular components, and also the mediators and the cytokines and the things that are needed to really effectuate good wound healing. So I believe regenerative medicine as we know it today was born right at that moment. So at that point, I developed a protocol that would treat chronic non-healing wounds using the patient's own blood. And I knew that these growth factors came from the patient's platelets. So I developed this protocol, and then I called a good doctor, a good friend of mine in Naples, and say, Doc, give me your worst patient. I've got a new treatment protocol. It's never been done before. It's really never been heard of before. I said, but I think it's safe, and I think I would like to see if this can work for you. So he said, sure. He gave me a patient with a chronic non-healing wound, 5-year chronic non-healing wound. Patient had a tunneling wound, 8 centimeters, and it was infected. Patient was scheduled for an amputation. So I said, great. So I went ahead, treated that patient, and in 6 months, I saved that patient's leg and healed that wound. And at that point, I knew I had something special. So And that happened right here in Fort Myers. I'm really proud to say that. I knew that this therapy had to be brought out to the world. The way I performed this therapy, it was not something that was feasible to be done in a physician's office. We had equipment. We used what we call an auto transfusion machine. And this machine required a patient to donate 500 mLs of blood just to get the amount of platelets that was needed to heal that wound. And not everybody can do that. You certainly couldn't do that in a physician's office. It required monitoring and a whole lot of other things. So I had to be innovative and come up with a tabletop system that a doctor can use in their office, and a patient can come in, get treated, and leave. And the healing can begin. And they're the first tabletop PRP, or autologous biologic system was born. It's called the Supply. And I developed that system in 2000 a year.
And now how many people around, or how many hospitals around the world are using this stuff?
So now, currently today, we lead the industry with our pure supraphysiologic concentrating systems. And this is being sold throughout the US. We sell in Canada, South America, Europe, Australia, Middle East, and also in Asia. It's being used all around the world. I've got success stories from professional athletes and so many other prominent individuals that have thanked me because of this particular technology that we've developed.
And it's breathtaking, and he did all of that self-funded, no outside investors, anything. That to me sounded like a Latimer type of super heroic performance, and it's a mind bender.